What's up, mystery gang? Thank you for coming to my channel. Now, if you have not already subscribed, click off this video, go hit that subscribe button and come back. Now, another thing is, make sure you hit that notification bell so you're alerted every time I post a video. Now, I know I said I was going to only post on Tuesdays, but I'm posting every other day because I have to get 4,000 watch hours in order to be monetized, and I'm like maybe 1,500 off, so I got a little ways to go, but nevertheless we're going to get there, and I'm trying to make it there by constantly posting. Today we're going to be discussing 3 cases. Now, these 3 cases are cases that were really senseless murders that didn't make sense and they should have never happened, but they happened, and I'm going to report them and let y'all know the details of the cases. Now, the first case is going to be the case of Kevon Watkins. Kevon Watkins was a 16-year-old teen from Macon, Georgia. Now, on February 2nd, 2018, Kevon's mom, Latoya, reported that Kevon had like a little nasty attitude that entire day. She said even when she picked him up from school, he continued with this attitude, and she don't know why, but he had an attitude. Now, after picking Kevon up from school, his mom is saying that he went in his room, closed the door, and began to play the game. Now, this was normal for Kevon. He loved his Xbox. He played his Xbox. I mean, he was 16 years old. That's all 16-year-old boys. So, Kevon went in his room to play the game, but it's what Kevon did next that just sparked up an entire argument. Kevon went in his room and changed the Wi-Fi password. Now, y'all know how annoying that could be when you can't connect to your Wi-Fi. But Kevon is saying the reason why he changed the Wi-Fi password was because he was playing the game, and whenever it's too many people connected, the game would run slow. So he decided to change the Wi-Fi password. Now, he was not the only person in this house. It was his mom, his dad. He had other siblings, and he had a 19-year-old sister named Alexa. She was 19 at this time. So after Kevon changed the Wi-Fi password, his 13-year-old brother, which I'm not going to disclose his name, his 13-year-old brother was like, okay, the Wi-Fi is messing up, and that's when he confronted Kevon. Kevon told him, yeah, I changed the Wi-Fi password because I'm playing my game. Now, the 13-year-old then went and told his mother, Latoya, look, he just changed the Wi-Fi password. Nobody can connect to the internet. And his mom went in his room to confront him, y'all. But when she confronted him, she did not know that it would escalate to that level. I mean, Kevon was in her face. He was going off. And his mom was really like mad at the fact that he was doing all of this over the Wi-Fi. But you have to understand, he did have an attitude when he came home from school. So something could have happened at school that nobody knew of. But that still did not give Kevon a reason to act the way he was acting about Wi-Fi. So after him and his mom get to arguing about the Wi-Fi, Alexis, which is his 19-year-old sister, comes out of the room and tries to defend her mom because she hears the argument going to a whole nother level. So as Alexis tries to defend her mom, her and Kevon then get into this huge argument that turns physical. Now, after this fight turns physical, Kevon's mom tries to break up the fight, but she's not successful. She then calls 911. Calling 911, Kevon has Alexis in a chokehold. The mom was on the phone with 911 for about 10 minutes until police officers arrived, and Kevon held on to Alexis this entire time. He never let his sister go. He held on to her neck. Now, when police and medics arrived, this is maybe like 20 minutes after everything started, Kevon finally lets Alexis go, and she falls to the ground. Medics tried CPR, they tried everything they can do, then they rush her off to the hospital. Once she gets to the hospital, Alexis sadly passes away. Now, Alexis is also a mother. She has a son, and she has just been literally murdered in front of her entire family.
According to evidence in the case, in February of 2018, a then 16-year-old Kevon Watkins was arguing with his mom because he changed the Wi-Fi password to play video games. His sister Alexis stepped in and then started fighting.
According to testimony in the case, Kevon placed his sister in a chokehold for about 15 minutes. Deputies say she was still in the chokehold when they arrived on scene. Alexis died in the hospital later that night.
So after being arrested and charged, Kevon basically was sentenced to life in prison. Now, While during his trial, Kevon says that he's sorry, he didn't mean to. This was not his, he was not trying to kill his sister. He's saying that he was just so angry at everything that was going on that he snapped and he just would not let her go. But you guys, that's no excuse for murdering your sibling over Wi-Fi. Like, do you know how crazy that is? Now, after being sentenced to life, Kevon broke down in the courtroom. He apologized to his mom, to his siblings. He apologized to Alexis because, I mean, he's saying it wasn't his intention to kill Alexis. And even prosecutors felt like it wasn't his intention. But the fact that he held on to Alexis for so long, I mean, he had to feel her body go limp. She had to stop fighting at some point in time, and he had to realize that, okay, she's not fighting no more. That's what made me believe that Kevon snapped. Because what would make you literally choke your sister out to the point where she's just lifeless? Like, that does not make sense at all. So Kevon is saying that he's sorry. And I mean, as a parent, I can only imagine how his mom feels, because not only do you have to bury your daughter, you have to raise her son. You have to tell her son that, look, your mom was murdered by your uncle. And then not only that, you have to basically testify against your child, your 16-year-old. So, I mean, it really was a lose-lose situation for the entire family. Now, that case was totally crazy, but this next case, y'all, just buckle your seatbelts up. So, the next person we're going to be talking about in this little series that I'm doing today is Obduila Sanchez. Now, Abdullah Sanchez was an 18-year-old who had a lot of issues. Now, it's being reported that when Abdullah was 13 years old, she was abducted and she was forced to drink alcohol and even was put on crystal milk. So, by all accounts, Abdullah went through some things in her life that other people might not never experience. So, on the day of July 21st, 2017, 18-year-old Abdullah was driving with her sister as a passenger and her sister's friend. They were 14 years old. Now, the crazy thing about this case is while Abdullah is driving, she's streaming on live stream her entire drive. So she's on the phone, video recording, and driving at the same time. And y'all, the biggest piece to this case is she was drunk and was on drugs while driving and recording. So why this is so important that she was recording is because minutes later after starting the live stream, Abdullah swerves off the road, hits a barbed wire fence, and flips the car into a field. Now, instead of stopping the live stream, y'all, Abdullah gets out of the car. She doesn't look visibly injured to me, but she's saying that she's hurting. She gets out of the car and starts to film the accident. But the crazy part is her 14-year-old sister, Jacqueline, was laying lifeless on the ground. Not only that, Jacqueline's 14-year-old friend, which I'm not gonna put her name out, her 14-year-old friend was seriously injured laying on the ground as well. They were ejected out of the vehicle because they were not wearing seatbelts. Now, instead of Abdullah stopping the live stream, she continued to live stream her sister's death and put it on social media. So not only did she just senselessly kill her sister by driving recklessly under the influence, she then films her sister's lifeless body and puts it on social media. Like, this case, y'all, out of all the cases I do, this one makes me so upset. So upset.
An 18-year-old woman driving while live on Instagram. The horrifying moments leading up to a crash. The CHP says two 14-year-old girls were in the back seat, not wearing seatbelts.
So during the live stream, you can see Abdullah walking up to her sister's body, touching her body and saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I just killed my sister. Now, my thing is this. Why wouldn't you just call the police? Why would you continue to live stream? So after all of this is happening, Abdullah is later charged with vehicular manslaughter while being under the influence. Her blood alcohol level was way over the legal limit and she was on drugs. And like I said, it's being reported that she went through something at age 13. She was abducted and put on drugs. So Abdullah had issues. Now, why her parents let her drive her 14-year-old sister, I don't know. Because if she was on live stream, on drugs and drinking, I'm quite sure her parents knew that she was drinking and on drugs at this time. Like I said, Jacqueline sadly did pass away. She was 14 and days away from her quinceañera. But her friend did survive, but she was seriously injured. Abdullah was sentenced to, I think it was 6 years and 4 months in state prison. And when we see her in court, she had like the Jacqueline tattoo, which a tattoo means nothing. Your sister's life is gone because you decided to be reckless. Her father is really just torn behind this because he feels as if Abdullah had a lot of issues and Abdullah needed help. But as parents, it was not up to, you know, other people to get her help. They should have gotten her help. This case made me really mad, and I mean, I just want y'all to drop in the comments how y'all feel about this. Should she have gotten life in prison? Because I feel like she should have gotten maybe 20 years in prison, and she should have been sentenced to go to a rehab facility, period. They should have never gave her 6 years. I feel like they gave her 6 years because I think that'll be around the time that Jacqueline probably would have been grown. But at the same time, she took this 14-year-old's life, and the other 14-year-old is never going to be the same ever again because she witnessed her best friend get killed in a car accident. All right, y'all, that's all for that one. Now this next case, this tops both of these cases. All right, so this next case that I'm going to be covering is the case of Jeffrey Hazelwood. Now, Jeffrey Hazelwood was a 20-year-old that lived in Roswell, Georgia. Now, Jeffrey's friends describe him as crazy. They say that they know that one day Jeffrey will go off the edge. He worked at a craft store in Georgia, and he lived with his grandparents. It's not really being reported why he doesn't live with his biological parents, but he lives with his grandparents. Now, as I was saying, his friends are saying that, you know, since they've known him, one of his friends that did an interview said they knew him since 3rd grade. That friend is saying that Jeffrey was just always a little weird. He said Jeffrey carried around knives, and they even went so far as to compare him to the guy who did the Columbine shooting, Dylan. They said he would act like Dylan. It's almost like he idolized him. Now, let's talk about the victims in this case. The victims in this case is Natalie Henderson and Carter Davis. They both were high schoolers, and on all accounts, y'all, they were amazing kids. Like, people who do interviews and talk about them, they say that Natalie was just like the most lovable, caring person ever, and so was Carter. And they were in a relationship, and they were in high school. Now, on the night, I guess it was the morning because it was basically the next day, on August 1st, 2016, Natalie and Carter decided to sneak out the house. Now, they both drove separate cars, but they met behind a Publix. So after meeting behind this Publix, Natalie and Carter, I guess they were just doing what teenagers were doing, you know, probably just talking, making out, whatever. We really don't know what happened inside of the car. But what they didn't know was that Jeffrey was literally watching them from afar. He was on foot, and he was standing like around the corner of the Publix just watching the teens in the car. Not only that, they're saying that Jeffrey even got on top of the Publix building and started watching them from on top of the building. Don't ask me how he got up there, y'all. I don't know. But I know on some buildings, it's like a ladder that you can climb up on, and you can, like, you know, get on top of the buildings. Now, I know a lot of kids do this, but Jeffrey was 20 years old. Anyway it goes, Jeffrey was watching the teens while they were in the car. Now, at some point of time, Jeffrey builds up the courage to walk up to the car. Now, when he walks up to the car and opens the door, Carter immediately confronts him. He goes off on Jeffrey, trying to figure out who he is. Like, why are you walking up to our car? So Jeffrey gets scared of Carter, and he hits Carter with a gun. Carter is knocked out, but Jeffrey still kills him. He shoots him in the head right then and there. So if you can imagine how Natalie feels, she's a 17-year-old girl. All she was doing was sneaking out to just spend a few moments with her boyfriend. It was nothing that serious. So why is this lunatic at the car? And not only that, he just killed her boyfriend. So after killing Carter by shooting him in the head, he then yanks Natalie out of the car. Now, when he yanks Natalie out of the car, he sexually assaulted her. He turns around, he spanked her, beat her right before shooting her in the head as well. Now, you guys, this is one of the most senseless murders this murder, he had no reason to do this to these kids. Like, no reason at all. It was just, he just had a chance to do it and he did it. Another thing is, Jeffrey did not know the teens at all. It's being reported that Jeffrey did sell drugs to kids at the high school that the teens attended, but Carter nor Natalie knew Jeffrey at all. This was just something that Jeffrey just did spare the moment. After murdering Carter and Natalie, Jeffrey then moved their bodies in sexual positions and put a feather in Natalie's hair. He then stole Natalie's debit card and went to a gas station and bought things, and then came back to the crime scene and took Carter's jumper cables because he thought his car would break down. Like, yeah, after you murder somebody, let me go back and get jumper cables from them. Like, that is so crazy, y'all. So the next morning, after the police pull up and find this gruesome crime scene and find the two teens laid out on the ground, they then begin the search of who did this to these teens. So they go back and look at surveillance camera and they look at, you know, just the surroundings. And that's when they find out that it was Jeffrey Hazelwood who had committed these crimes. Not only that, they also got the surveillance camera from the gas station and saw Jeffrey on foot at the gas station and on foot at the Publix. So they arrested Jeffrey and he admitted to the crimes. He never denied it.
Murdering two high school students faced a judge. You can see Jeffrey Hazelwood shaking in court. Roswell police say he shot and killed Carter Davis and Natalie Henderson behind a grocery store Monday. Channel 2's Audrey Washington is live at the Fulton County Jail. And Audrey, the judge denied bond. And at one point, the suspect appeared to be petting an imaginary dog.
So Jeffrey admitted to these crimes and he did police interviews where one day he would say he did one thing and then the next day he said he did another thing. He never would stick to the same story. So during the trial, Jeffrey was just literally shaking everywhere and people were like, why is he shaking like that? Now his friends are saying that this is not an act. They say that Jeffrey is really crazy and they knew that one day he would go over the edge. They said it was only a matter of time before he went over the edge. So at his trial, he was sentenced to life in prison, but he pleaded guilty and people were surprised that he pled guilty. But y'all, I wasn't surprised because the reason he pled guilty was because he was trying to say he was mentally ill. Nevertheless, Jeffrey was sentenced to life in prison. And I mean, this case just really rocked the Roswell community. They could not believe that these two innocent, beautiful lives were taken for no reason. Now, this is the reason why Jeffrey was #1, like on my little list, because I could not believe when I saw this case. I was like, I know this is not real. All right, so that's all I have for you guys today. I know those 3 cases were really wild and people are gonna be like, oh my God. But just make sure you guys subscribe to my channel and make sure you hit that notification bell. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Bye.